Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm David Percy. Up first, we've got the first graphic here showing, again, strong winds as forecasted farther to the east today across Kodiak Island and Shelikof Strait there, and southern Cook Inlet, Kamishak Bay areas, with the strongest wind gusts occurred at AKwx, southwest side of Kodiak Island, 76 miles an hour peak wind gusts there so far. Sitkinak Island, just to the south, had 61 miles per hour, and Kodiak State Airport had a peak wind gust of 66 miles per hour, and then Pilot Rock there, which is just south of Resurrection Bay in the Kenai Peninsula, 61 miles per hour. So strong winds kicking in there, temperatures falling, heavy freezing spray in those marine areas. And for the hazardous weather graphic, there's a wind chill advisory out for the Kobuk Valley, Noatak Valley, Seward Peninsula, Kotzebue, Selawik, those areas, Kivalina, and that's out until 3 p.m. Sunday. Look for wind chills run anywhere from 40 to 50 degrees below zero, with winds 15 miles an hour or more for those wind chills to kick into effect. And also, let's see, that's a winter weather advisory for the southeastern Brooks Range, Anatuvik Pass, Galbraith Lake, and I think even possibly Arctic Village in there too. And that's out for tonight, looking for snow and blowing snow and wind chills there to 50 degrees below zero. Occasional visibilities down below half a mile at times, especially out toward the eastern Arctic coast toward Kaktovik. And then next graphic here, farther to the south, showing the high wind warning out Kodiak Island for 80 mile an hour wind gusts until, let's see, that's 11 p.m. this evening, so toward midnight. And then the wind should start, those peak wind gusts will start dropping down probably under 70 miles an hour after midnight tonight, but it's going to stay windy through the night and in at least through early tomorrow, probably through tomorrow afternoon, but there'll be a noticeable decrease in the winds there. And also high wind warning, harder to see there for Thompson Pass there northeast of Valdez. That's for 75 mile an hour wind gusts out of the northeast, and that's warnings out through Monday morning, or at least through tomorrow night into Monday there for that area. And then snow advisory for the southern panhandle for 3 to 5 inches additional snow coming in late tonight or tomorrow for another band of moisture that'll shift northward from a low pressure area that's off to the west there. And moving on to satellite imagery, you can see the low center tracking right in toward the central and south coast of the panhandle. They're kind of gathering moisture with another surge of cloudiness there that'll be bringing the snow into mainland central and southern areas as colder, drier air gets drawn southward with falling pressures due to the approach of that low center, which is about 970 millibars. So look for a big increase in the northerly winds there at Lincoln Glacier Bay down into the Juneau area. Otherwise, out to the west, the next big storm coming into the western Aleutians with a huge cirrus cloud shield associated with that, bringing rain and wind in toward the Shemya area with the increase in the cirrus and clouds, mostly for Adak and the Atka Island area, clearing out over the eastern Aleutians today with snow showers just about ended. Same thing for the Pribilofs, kind of in a break there, high pressure ahead of that next system as the ridge shifts off to the east, but still pretty windy on the Alaska Peninsula. And then the strong winds again shifted eastward, now blowing along the Alaska Range through the passes, starting to get a pickup in the winds. Nikiski, Cook Inlet seeing gusts 35 miles an hour, about 25 miles an hour at the state airport in Anchorage up to Point McKenzie. And those could probably continue to increase with colder temperatures tonight. Otherwise, areas of light snow over the Fairbanks area, Nenana and Upper Chena picked up anywhere from 1 to 2 inches of snow. Areas of light snow extending all the way up to the eastern Arctic coast. And that'll probably continue, slowly taper off, but that pattern will probably last into the day Monday. On the chart, 968 millibar low, still fairly deep. You can see the tight pressure field across the Alaska Range to the Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet, down across Kodiak Island. and the Shelikof Strait area. Less of a gradient out over the Alaska Peninsula along the west coast there as that Arctic ridge starts to shift eastward. And for tonight, that continues that pattern, so diminishing winds, light variable winds there for the Fox Islands, kind of signifying a change in the pattern coming in as warmer and windier conditions push into the western Aleutians, gradually edging over toward Adak and Atka. Stays windy this evening in Kodiak Island, and increasing winds across southern Alaska Copper River Basin, and outflowing winds Copper River Delta and the passes or the bays northern Prince William Sound. Colder, drier northerly winds into the northern Panhandle with snow to the south. And outlook for Sunday, windy and dry and cold southern Alaska. Still some lingering snow flurries in the northeast, increasing wind and snow Pribilofs, Fox Islands, and southern Panhandle. Less wind Kodiak Island, in fact, swinging around to the southeast with a chance of snow southwest coast, and moisture pushes inland into the southwest interior, increasing chance of snow southern Kenai Peninsula, and cold and dry and windy for the Panhandle, cold, very cold for the northern central interior. And for lows tonight, 15 to 25, 15 to 30 below for the Kuskokwim Valley, and 15 to 20 below for the Bristol Bay area, near 10 for Kodiak Island, 10 below to 10 above south central Alaska, 20 below or 15 below for the Copper River Basin. Colder in the Panhandle. Highs tomorrow upper teens toward Haines Skagway to mid 30s down south, and the lows following morning near 40 below for McGrath and Nikolai, and 20 to 25 below for Bristol Bay, near 8 for Kodiak. Well below zero again, south central Alaska, Manuscus, the Sitna Valley, 30 below or so for the Copper River Basin, and single numbers northern Panhandle, lower 20s to the south. Highs staying below freezing across all the southeast coast, hardly cracking zero south central Alaska. Up to the north, well below zero again, and for the lows, highs not much warmer tomorrow, and then even colder the next day.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Sunday morning, marginal VFR, Arctic Coast North Slope, Brooks Range, all of the eastern interior, down across the eastern Copper River Basin to the eastern North Gulf Coast. VFR there from Yakutat on into the northern Panhandle, and also the western interior south of the Brooks Range, except for the Southwest Mountains, and then marginal VFR, the Alaska Range up across the mid and upper Yukon River. IFR, Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula. Some IFR there. Marmot Bay, say, up across and east of Fognak Island, and then marginal VFR, central Bering Sea, Pribilofs, and the eastern Aleutians. IFR spreading into the Adak-Atka area and covering the southwest Bering. And for the afternoon, that area of IFR advances a pretty good band there, covering just about all the Aleutians, advancing eastward and covering the Pribilofs and Unalaska Island. VFR along and off the southwest coast, pretty good for Nunivak Island, St. Lawrence Island as well. VFR conditions, Bering Strait, western interior, some lesser marginal VFR for the North Slope and Arctic coast. And hanging on to the eastern interior, north of the Alaska Range, areas of marginal VFR. Won't be solid, but just areas of. And then VFR mostly, southern Alaska, into the North Gulf Coast, Cape Yakataga, Cape St. Elias area, right around marginal VFR, and the Panhandle, marginal VFR with areas of VFR. And for the day on Monday morning, mostly VFR for the southeast coast now, as well as the North Gulf Coast, and much interior Alaska looking really good under cold high pressure, marginal or VFR conditions. A little bit of marginal VFR still north of the eastern Alaska Range and from over the eastern interior. But that band of IFR, that system pushing eastward, but the marginal VFR not quite reaching Nunivak Island, spreading into Bristol Bay and improving behind the front there. Marginal VFR breaking out to VFR towards Chimianatu. But then another system rolls in and brings IFR into the southwest Bering eastward to Kiska Island from the Shimya area. And then the next band of IFR makes landfall on the southwest coast midday, early afternoon, and also into Bristol Bay, but doesn't make much headway beyond that. But IFR reaching Sitkinak and maybe Akiak, Kodiak Island, as marginal VFR spreads up in towards southern Cook Inlet, and just catching the southern Kenai Peninsula and then northeastward there to the eastern North Gulf Coast. Everywhere else looking good, VFR. Anatuvik VFR tomorrow, marginal VFR for Anatuvik, same forecast for Adigan, marginal VFR. And Lake Clark and Merrill, we'll see the VFR flying conditions on either entrance through the pass. Rainy starting out, possibly marginal, especially on the west side, but becoming VFR for the remainder of the day. Windy, marginal VFR with VFR to the south. Lowest conditions, north entrance, VFR south entrance for Isabel. That same pattern also from Antasta, VFR out the south entrance into the Copper River Basin. Tanita, good VFR, either approach, Portage, same forecast. Good VFR, ceilings visibility is unlimited. And Chilcoot and White, VFR, but pretty turbulent with increasing mechanical turbulence with that cold outflow winds from the north. And freezing levels, as you can see, that cold air pushing the surface freezing levels back down to Dixon Entrance and off the coast, well south of Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, coming back up across Dunmac Island, pushing warm air of that southerly flow ahead of the next system there over the western Aleutians with 8,000 feet just about reaching the Aleutian chain there. And with that considerable moderate rime icing, with that pushing into the southwest Bering with isolated moderate reaching the Pribilofs and eastern Aleutians, and possible icing threat over the southern panhandle as well. Jet stream, northwest flow, cold upper trough shifting eastward there, and 190 knot northwesterlies blowing across the southwest interior, Kodiak Island supporting the strong surface winds, southwest 135 knots, western Aleutians. 9,000 feet, 50 to 70 knot winds with that storm out west. Northerly 60 knots there across the Aleutian Range, Alaska Peninsula. Lighter up over the interior, and 3,000 feet. 35 to 40 knot north-northeasterlies from about the Seward Peninsula southward across Yukon, Kuskokwim Delta, Kuskokwim Valley, Kuskokwim Mountains, and across the Aleutian Range. 50 knots there, Susitna Valley. And westerlies 55 to 60 out over the western Aleutians. Considerable moderate chop due to mechanical turbulence, Kodiak Island, all of southern Alaska, North Gulf Coast, into the northern panhandle, as well as just about all the Aleutians.
You guys got everything tied down back there? Yeah. Yep. We're going through the lee of St. Elias, so there might be some turbulence.
Fasten seatbelt sign on.
Well, who am I to tell you what to do?
There are tens of thousands of glaciers in Alaska. Some stunning cliffhangers, others wide glaciers that come down to meet the ocean tides. Some, like this one we flew over in August, are easily visible from low Earth orbit and are mesmerizing from 1,000 feet above, and have trees growing on top of their soil-laden boundaries. Those glaciers, although they represent only a fraction of the world's ice, are contributing much more than their share to sea level rise. Chris Larson and his colleagues have repeatedly measured 220 of them in a small single-engine otter, measuring their height with lasers and their depth with radar, and watching them change from season to season and year to year. But Alaskan glaciers are also different. We're only just figuring out how they all behave. Data from flights like these, part of NASA's Operation Icebridge, can help fill the gaps. Chris and radar specialist Martine Trufer are both from the University of Alaska Fairbanks and both seasoned Alaskan pilots. But they rely on their good friend and legendary bush pilot Paul Kloss and his 35,000 hours in the cockpit to fly the incredibly demanding flight lines the mission requires.
And does it help you guys being pilots too?
I would like to think so, but watching Paul fly and seeing what he does, it's kind of like trying to learn quantum mechanics in kindergarten.
You know, I can fly my airplane around, but just seeing what Paul does in this extremely challenging environment in the mountains while trying to follow a specific flight line at a specific altitude above ground, negotiating winds, topography, maybe occasional low-level clouds that you have to get around, and just managing all that is just several levels above what I could do as a pilot.
Well, I think the first time I came here to this park, I was probably 4 years old with my father. I've been blessed to be able to fly in lots of places in the world, all over the place actually, almost every continent. I guess I'm always looking for some place that might be better than this, but I haven't found it.
Paul's plane is about 60 years old and is the first single-engine otter ever retrofitted with a 1,000 horsepower engine, which makes takeoffs feel effortless and gives Paul the ability to negotiate wild terrain, which he certainly did during the first 2 incredible science flights of this campaign. And with sunny skies and relatively calm air, we covered 3 vastly different pieces of ice. While Paul fueled up the plane, Chris gave us a preview of the day's science and scenery.
So it has one of the greatest coastal reliefs anywhere in the world. So it's between the ocean and the summit of Mount St. Elias, which is 18,008 feet high. It's less than 10 miles. There's a stupendous amount of mountain right off the ocean. It's hard to beat it anywhere in the world. It might be the prettiest for me. It's absolutely stunning. From here in McCarthy, we'll cross one of the bigger precipitation gradients in Alaska too. Here it's about 10 inches of precipitation a year, and we'll go over to an area where it's on the order of 200 inches per year. So it's from one of the driest parts of Alaska to one of the wettest parts of Alaska in about 45 minutes flight time.
Oh, that's pretty good.
That's awesome. You want to do Tyndall next?
Sure, where you want?
If the winds are calm now, might as well grab it.
First, we came to the rugged landscape of Icy Bay, which not that long ago wasn't a bay at all. It was filled with ice. Tidewater glaciers in this region can make dramatic advances and retreats as they feed on high rates of snowfall and then retreat as they're melted by warm ocean waters. Like the Tyndall Glacier seen here, most of these glaciers have retreated dramatically over the last 100 years. But nearby Yahtzee Glacier, after years of retreat, is currently the most rapidly advancing glacier in Alaska. Overall, though, the Icebridge Alaska surveys, from the Denali region in the north to the Juneau ice field in the southeast, have documented pretty substantial thinning of glacial ice. Areas seen here in orange and red show between about 10 and 15 feet of thinning per year.
1200.
It's a nice waterfall up there from the hanging ice.
We very first started profiling this, Paul, this gravel fan and the one in the valley next to it didn't exist.
I was going to say,
this was
look at all the good landing spots here.
Yeah,
There's no place to land here before.
no, it was deep water.
After covering several of Icy Bay's glaciers, given that it was time for lunch, just like that, we landed in this unforgettable spot. Flying eastward, leaving Icy Bay behind, we came to the mighty Malaspina, one of the Earth's great examples of a Piedmont glacier that spills out like pancake batter onto a broad plain as it approaches the sea. It surges at uneven intervals, creating dramatic patterns on its surface as it distorts the moraines of rock and soil borne along by the glacier. The Malaspina is less dynamic than the Yahtzee and is only melting at about the average rate for Alaska, but that could change quickly.
It has the potential for being one of the bigger geographic evolutions in Alaska. Certainly My son will be able to witness some big geography changes there. There's potential for it being connected with the ocean through some narrow lagoons, estuaries, which would take a little bit of coastal erosion, but it's not too hard to imagine that where the Malaspina Glacier is now could become a large bay.
The data that Martine's radar provides could reveal how vulnerable the Malaspina is to melting by the nearby ocean. Here we see the radar returns from the surface of the glacier, and here is something that Chris's lasers can't see, the rocky bed of the glacier, giving us both clues as to what's happening under the ice, as well as a measurement of its thickness. Finally, we came to the Yakutat ice field, 300 square miles of absolutely doomed ice perched high in the mountains. Researchers even debate how this ice field came to be at all, since in its current configuration, it's hard to imagine how it could capture enough snow to form glacial ice. And so, even if the Arctic weren't warming faster than the rest of the planet, this area would be likely to melt within a century or two. But with many other glaciers, it's easier to see the connection between a warming planet and ice loss. Thanks to data from IceBridge and other surveys, we now have a good estimate of the current rate of loss from Alaskan glaciers, 75 gigatons a year. While airborne observations over Alaskan glaciers have provided a rich record of change in the area, those efforts are now augmented by NASA's newest ice measuring tool, ICESat-2. With 6 laser beams of its own, and orbiting the Earth every 90 minutes, the satellite will carry on the record of Alaskan change. For their part, Chris and his team will continue to do their surveys for at least the next 2 years, helping to validate the ICESat-2 data and make further detailed observations over the stunning glaciers of Alaska.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis, it's continued to make a fairly good jog to the south and southwest. Well south of St. Lawrence Island now, and well west of Nunivak Island, with a southward extent or increase there over Bristol Bay. And that'll continue for another couple of days, and then things will slow up, if not just about stop, as wind flow over the Bering becomes more westerly or even southwesterly by at least by the middle of next week. And from there, going on to the coastal water forecasts for the south coast of the Panhandle. East winds 15 to 25 knots. North coast small craft advisories east-northeast at 30 knots. Big increase in the winds there out of the north for Lynn Canal. Sustained north 45 knots high and gales there. Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, northern inner channels. Small craft advisories, Stevens Passage, north winds increasing to 30 knots. But Clarence Strait, southeast to 20 with 11-foot seas. And for Monday, Clarence Strait, those winds go north, but only about 20 knots with gale warnings for the central and northern inside waters and channel areas for northerly winds, 35 to 40 knots. Small craft advisories along the coast, central and south coast, for north winds 25 knots, seas around 10 feet. And up on the north coast, winds will be easterly, 15 to 20 knots. Prince William Sound, gale warnings tomorrow, north 35 knots, gusts up 50 knots, seas at 7 feet. Eastern North Gulf Coast, north winds 30 knots, small craft advisories, but gusts of 55 knots out of the Copper River Delta. And gale warnings for the western North Gulf Coast, north winds at 40 to 50 knots. And storm warnings for Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands, northwest winds 50 to 55 knots, seas around 15 feet. Small craft advisories for Cook Inlet, north winds 25 knots. Outlook for Monday, winds come down everywhere. But still, small craft advisories, Prince William Sound, north 25 knots, northeast 25 knots for small craft advisories for the North Gulf Coast. Gale warnings for the Barren Islands, winds northeast at 40, seas around 10 feet. Minimum gales now for Kamishak Bay, north winds at 35 knots. Small craft advisories, southern Cook Inlet, north winds 25 knots and only 15 knots from the north of the Forelands. Kodiak Island storm warnings, northwest coming down 45 to 50 knots during the afternoon tomorrow. And gale warnings for Bristol Bay, northwest winds 35 knots, and gale warnings for the Alaska Peninsula, north to northwest 30 to 40 knot winds there. Storm warnings from Castle Cape to Sitkinak Island tomorrow through the day, northwest winds 55 knots, seas just under 20 feet. And for Monday, Kodiak Island, northeast winds 20 to 30 knots. Small craft advisories, Bristol Bay, northeast at 30 knots. And gale warnings for the Alaska Peninsula. Winds swung around to the southeast and come up to 35 knots. Fox Islands, Unalaska Island, small craft advisories, east winds 25 to 30 knots, but gale warnings for Unmac Island, southeast winds increasing to 40 knots in the afternoon. And that same pattern extends all the way to Shimei and Attu with gale warnings on southeast winds 40 to 45 knots. And for Monday, gales for the western Aleutians, south winds 40 to 45 knots, Shimei to Amchitka. Adak and Atka gale warnings, south to southwest 35 knots, and Unmac Island, small craft advisories west-southwest 30 knots, but gale warnings for Unalaska Island west-southwest 35 to 40 knots. Southwest coast gale warnings, south of Nunivak Island, northerly winds 35 knots, east at 30 for the Pribilof Islands, east 25 knots for St. Matthew Island, north 20 for the Yukon Delta coast and St. Lawrence Island. Outlook for Monday, full gale, St. Lawrence Island, all the way down to Nunivak, actually all the southwest coast, St. Lawrence Island, east winds 40 knots, all those areas. And storm warnings for the St. Matthew Island area, east winds at 50 knots and southwest 40 knot winds in the forecast with 16-foot seas for St. Paul and St. George Islands. Eastern Arctic coast, brisk wind advisories tomorrow, westerlies 25 to 30 knots, much lighter on the central coast west at 15, and then west 20 knots for the western Arctic coast all the way down to Wales. Outlook for Monday, northeast 15 knots from Wales up to Cape Thompson. Western central eastern Arctic coast, west winds 10 to 15 or 5 to 15 knots. For tonight, wind chill advisory, or actually high wind warning continues Kodiak Island until I believe about 11 p.m. for 80 mile an hour wind gusts. And Thompson Pass high wind warning through Monday morning or through Sunday night for northeast winds to 75 miles an hour. And areas of light snow continue. Winter weather advisories eastern interior. Wind chill advisories continue Seward Peninsula and the eastern Brooks Range. And snow advisory southern panhandle. Next storm coming out west there slowly pushes eastward. Cold and dry and less wind over Kodiak Island tomorrow, and then chance of snow.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.